Yeah, I'll react to that, sure. Falklands fighter. Hey guys, original link to the video from Mark Felton Productions, top of the description, preemptive like. Falklands fighter with combat kill, Sharky wards Sea Harrier. So, Falklands War. I don't think it's the first conflict that people think of when they think of 20th century wars. And so, like others, I know very little about it. Let's get into it. What is that?
42 years ago, Britain went to war with Argentina over a group of windswept islands 8,000 miles south of the UK on the very edge of Antarctica called the Falklands. A British dependency since 1833, Argentina disputed and still disputes ownership of these islands, what they call Las Malvinas, home to some 2,000 people of almost completely British ancestry. In 1982, the ruling Argentinian cabal of generals organized an invasion of the Falklands and another British dependency nearby, South Georgia, to settle the sovereignty dispute once and for all. However, Britain's Prime Minister Margaret Thatcher determined to take back control of the Falklands and South Georgia and assembled the largest British naval task force seen since World War II in order to do so, complete with a brigade of Royal Marines, later reinforced by an army brigade as well.
What is the British view? Is it somewhat split, or is it almost everyone agreed that you should take back the Falklands? Or were there anyone, or was there, or is there anyone who still thinks you should have just left it to the Argentinians? I'm curious how what the solidarity was in Britain.
It was an immense and difficult undertaking, and Britain faced serious opposition from a proper army, air force and navy, Argentina possessing an aircraft carrier, submarines, modern combat aircraft, Exocet missiles, and a 20,000-man garrison on the Falklands itself. Steaming south, the British task force was built around two aircraft carriers, the modern Invincible-class light carrier HMS Illustrious, and the older and larger Centaur-class HMS Hermes, heavily protected by a large fleet of destroyers and frigates, and of course the task force including troop ships, transports and auxiliary ships.
Argentina had an aircraft carrier. That surprises me. I'm pretty sure they don't anymore, right?
Face some serious problems. The huge distance to the Falklands, the inadequate number of aircraft able to contest air supremacy over the islands and protect the fleet from attack. Britain had phased out its large catapult-equipped aircraft carriers, which were loaded with supersonic aircraft, replacing the Phantoms and Buccaneers with a new type of naval fighter, the Sea Harrier FRS-1. Taking off using a ski ramp and landing vertically, this versatile plane meant that carriers could be smaller and cheaper, leading to the three ships of the Invincible class. Tiny in comparison to Britain's older aircraft carriers, and of course to contemporary US nuclear-powered ones. In comparison to the numbers of combat aircraft the Argentine Air Force and the Navy could deploy against the Royal Navy fleet steaming south, the Navy had only the Sea Harrier as its fighter, and only 28 were included aboard the carriers. They were supplemented by 14 RAF Harrier GR3s to be used in the ground attack role. But the 28 Sea Harriers were the only viable combat aircraft able to deal with Argentine Mirages, Skyhawks and Daggers for control of airspace over the Falklands, which was of course required to commence the British landings of troops, and to protect the carriers and other ships from determined Argentine attacks using...
The thing that surprised me most so far is just how big the Argentinian military was. Excuse me, I was not aware.
Bombs and missiles. Carriers and other ships from determined Argentine attacks using bombs and missiles. The Sea Harrier proved more than a match for the Argentine aircraft. They shot down 20 Argentine aircraft for no air-to-air losses, losing 2 Harriers to ground fire and 4 to accidents.
Well,
In total, Sea Harriers accounted for 28% of Argentine air losses during the war, and several pilots, both Royal Navy and RAF, some RAF Harrier pilots being seconded to the Sea Harrier squadrons during the war, scored multiple kills in the last true air-to-air combat operations to the present day, pitting jet fighter against jet fighter in proper dogfights. Though none of the British pilots managed to achieve the 5 air kills to become official aces, 2 did manage to shoot down 3 aircraft each, becoming the top-scoring British pilots of the Falklands War. One was RAF Flight Lieutenant David Morgan, who shot down an Argentine Puma helicopter, 2 A4Q Skyhawks, and also shared a kill on a second Puma helicopter, making Morgan the highest scorer. However, Royal Navy Harrier pilot Commander Nigel Sharky Ward also achieved 3 aerial kills, and one of the Sea Harriers he used to achieve one of those kills is preserved today at a regional British museum. It is actually quite rare to see museum aircraft whose pilots achieved aerial victories in them. A few years ago, I had the privilege of sitting in the cockpit of a Spitfire Mark I that had 1 kill to its name, shooting down a Junkers Ju-87 Stuka in 1940. It is incredibly rare to 87 Stuka in 1940. It is incredibly rare to find a modern-era jet with any combat kills in a museum, so I was excited to see an aircraft with such a pedigree lovingly preserved for posterity at the Norfolk and Suffolk Aviation Museum at Flixton. The aircraft looks a little different compared to how it looked in 1982, having been upgraded to the Sea Harrier FA2 configuration in 1992.
I wonder why that is, that it's so rare for aircraft that achieved combat kills to be in museums. Is that just an odds thing? Like they just happen to not survive in a, you know, unsullied, or like were they just seen as scrap metal after the wars? They weren't seen as very important? Or
its nose being changed, and its paint scheme also dating from the 1990s rather than the Falklands War. But it proudly displays a kill icon beneath the right side of the cockpit, achieved when Sharky Ward was at the controls of this aircraft on the 21st of May 1982. The day British forces began landing on East Falkland to begin military operations to fight through and capture the capital, Port Stanley. Ward had joined the Royal Navy in 1962 and had actually been court-martialed in 1969 for frightening members of the public, making low-level flights over Devon and Cornwall in his jet. Posted to HMS Ark Royal, he flew the Phantom F-4K, and in the late 1970s was intimately involved in the development of the Sea Harrier. In 1979, commanding the Sea Harrier Intensive Flying Training Unit at 700 Naval Air Squadron, receiving the Air Force Cross for his efforts. Given command of No. 801 Naval Air Squadron, he would command a squadron of 8 Harriers during the Falklands War. His first combat occurred on the 21st of May 1982 when he was flying Sea Harrier X-Ray Zulu 451, leading 3 aircraft and a combat air patrol southwest of San Carlos Water, where the British amphibious landings were occurring. The Sea Harriers were vectored onto a pair of Pucara ground attack aircraft, these excellent counter-insurgency planes a real threat to British ground forces. One Pucara evaded an attack by the Sea.
I feel like I never see jet-sized, like fighter jet-sized aircraft. I don't think I've ever seen a fighter jet-style aircraft other than World War II ones. Like post-World War II fighter jet-style aircraft with a propeller. I don't think I've seen that.
British ground forces. One Pucara evaded an attack by the Sea Harriers, while Sharky managed to open fire with his 30mm cannon on the second Pucara, setting the Pucara's starboard engine on fire and damaging the port aileron. Sharky attacked again, hitting the Pucara's fuselage and port engine. Then Sharky made a third attack, down to an altitude of only 10 feet off the deck, his cannon shells raking the Pucara's canopy and upper fuselage. The Argentine pilot ejected and the Pucara crashed. Returning to HMS Illustrious, Sharky changed aircraft, flying a second sortie at the controls of Zulu Alpha 175. This aircraft now preserved at Flixton.
Hold on, question. So these are the machine guns, right? And so there's no aiming going on in the cockpit in terms of the machine gun. It's just you aiming the machine gun is aiming the aircraft. And so you just want to point head on, right? It's not like that, right? I feel like that's got to be obvious, right? These are definitely the machine guns. They're not on swivels.
Attack down to an altitude of only 10
And I'm assuming that's the case for fighter jets even today.
feet
Most
off
of
the
them?
deck. His cannon wingman
Oops, sorry.
preserved at
Right
Flixton.
here.
With his wingman, Sharky was carrying out a low-level combat air patrol west of San Carlos water when Sharky sighted two Argentine Air Force IAI Daggers, the Israeli-made version of the French Dassault Mirage 5 multi-role fighter. These aircraft were armed with bombs and were headed for San Carlos to attack British ships there. Sharky flew at them head-on, turning hard to engage them as they passed. The daggers also turned sharply away from San Carlos and started to head for Argentina. The daggers passed in front of Sharky's wingman's Harrier, and his wingman shot both of them down using his AIM-9L Sidewinder missiles. In the meantime, a third, unseen dagger attacked Sharky's Sea Harrier, firing its cannon from behind him, but the shells missed. Sharky Ward turned and locked on to the dagger, turning it into a fireball with a Sidewinder. While this fight was going on, a fourth dagger attacked HMS Brilliant, but did little damage.
So he was chasing after one aircraft, shot it down with a missile, then was being shot at by another aircraft behind it that missed, and then he maneuvered and then shot that aircraft down, which is crazy.
Sharky made his third and final Falklands War air-to-air kill on the 1st of June 1982. When again flying Sea Harrier X-Ray Zulu 451. With his wingman, Sharky was vectored onto a radar contact 40 miles to the northwest. The two Sea Harriers closed in on an Argentine C-130 Hercules transport, which was flying at 200 feet above the sea. The Sea Harriers were actually running short of fuel, and Sharky fired a Sidewinder which fell short of the C-130, but his second missile started a fire between the inner and outer starboard engines. Sharky then gave the C-130 240 rounds of 30mm cannon fire that sent the Argentine machine into the sea, killing its 7-man crew.
How does a missile start a fire in an engine but doesn't take down the aircraft?
Sharky started a fire, but Sidewinder which fell short. The Harriers were actually running short of fuel, and Sharky fired a Sidewinder which fell short of the C-130, but his second missile started a fire between the inner and outer starboard engines. Sharky then gave the C-130 240 rounds of 30mm cannon fire that sent the Argentine machine into the sea, killing its 7-man crew. For his 60 missions in the Falklands War, including 3 air-to-air victories, Sharky was awarded the Distinguished Service Cross. He retired from the Navy in 1985. Incidentally, his son also became a Sea Harrier pilot, flying the later FA-2 version of the iconic fighter. Sharky Ward died at his home in Grenada in the Caribbean in May 2024 at the age of 80. The Sea Harrier, in which Sharky achieved his dagger kill, was built in 1980. Following the Falklands War, it served with No. 899 Naval Air Squadron at the Royal Naval Air Station Yeovilton, and in 1992 was upgraded to its current FA-2 configuration. It has been on display at Flixton since 2004, and in 2006, in a somewhat misguided decision, the government retired all Sea Harriers from Royal Navy service, leaving Britain with no naval fixed-wing fighters, until very recently, and the commissioning of Britain's two new supercarriers, HMS Queen Elizabeth and Prince of Wales, which field the US-built F-35B Lightning II multi-role fighter. Interestingly, Sharky Ward's other Sea Harrier, in which he had achieved 2 of his Falklands War kills, X-Ray Zulu 451, was written off in a flying accident in November 1989 and scrapped. The Norfolk and Suffolk Aviation Museum at Flixton is completely free to visit, relying solely on donations from the public to survive. Do check out their website in the description box below, and if you can, do please visit or make a donation. It's a wonderful museum with a wide range of aircraft and artifacts from both World Wars and the Cold War. And also, if you're interested in Falklands War aircraft, they have an Argentine Pucara on display. Many thanks for watching. Please subscribe and share, and also visit my audiobook channel, War Stories with Mark Felton.
Mark Felton has the perfect voice for audiobooks.
You can also help to support both of my channels at PayPal and Patreon. Details in the description box below.
Okay, it's very interesting. Obviously, rest in peace. He died in Grenada, right? This year, a few months ago. So fixed wing aircraft just means, I'm assuming, does that just mean not a helicopter? If you're a fixed wing aircraft, you're not a helicopter. Is there any other non-fixed wing aircraft that isn't a helicopter? I had a few questions. Another one was, what was the British public idea of the war? At the start of the war, in the middle, at the end, was everyone on board? Did everyone think that this was something that Britain had to do? I mean, my personal, obviously, if your territory gets attacked, you should probably fight back, right? But I'm just curious what the idea was with people at the time in Britain. I had a few other questions. A great video as always. I really want to know how a missile could have started a fire. I'm imagining it like passing by the aircraft and the exhaust of the missile like hitting an engine or something. I don't know. Yeah, I feel like I had a few other questions, but they weren't as important as like what I wanted to know what the public idea of the war was at the time. Very crazy. Oh yeah, this is interesting too. Propeller on a jet aircraft post World War II. I didn't know that was a thing. Love y'all. Hope you're all doing well. Would appreciate any answers to any questions I had down below. Any comments at all. You guys are always awesome with that. And hopefully I'll see you guys next video. All right. Bye, guys.